Today on the Riff, Jeremy and Justin sit down and talk about the theological term incarnation and what it means for us here and now. And naturally, they also talk about the best canned chili. Fun fact, Jeremy once brought home 45 pounds of canned chili from a trip to the Northwest in his luggage. That is called commitment. We hope today is helpful. Thanks for listening.
Welcome, Riff listeners and viewers.
Right.
So Justin, I was out a couple weeks during the fall when you had the audacity to continue to have Riff episodes without me.
I did. And I just want to make this public.
Okay. Is this an apology?
It is. It's going to be.
Okay.
I did sit in your seat.
I could tell.
Yeah.
I have a memory foam.
No, I know.
And it does not feel like it remembers me.
No, it remembers me.
I've got some questions.
And I'm sorry.
Okay. I appreciate it. I appreciate you saying something, and I definitely will consider your apology.
Thank you.
In the meantime, though, I did enjoy the episodes.
Great.
So one particular one with Will, you talked a lot about our Viewers and maybe those who are just listening and not watching might be missing out. So all that to say is I'm not here to say you should be viewing or should be listening. I just want to say welcome to all of our viewers. And might we add Merry Christmas, because this is dropping on Christmas week. So Merry Christmas to all of our North Pointers. Our target audience for the Riff is for those who are on the journey with us, trying to create a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus right here in the Southwest Missouri area. However, we have people who might be outside of that reach who, for whatever reason, are on this deal. But wherever you're at, Merry Christmas to you. And I want to talk a little bit about the incarnation. Fancy word.
I love flowers.
Yes.
Yeah, I love those, man.
Yeah.
I love them.
Well, and I know that you
I'm
do.
excited.
I know that you do.
So
You're
excited.
a boutonniere type of guy.
I really am.
And so we're going to talk about the incarnation, what Christmas means. Now, at the same time, we also realize we got Christmas services. We'll talk about that this weekend that we hope are helpful and whatnot. But I want us to take just a little bit of time today, talk about why this is a big deal, and then talk about how we've kind of positioned a few things for people to be able to celebrate later this week. Before we get into that, we are fresh off of some give back events.
Incredible.
So, Justin, talk to me a little bit about why we do these things like these Christmas give back events.
You say it all the time. What happens outside the walls of North Point is more important than what happens inside the walls of North Point.
Yeah.
And give back, it makes us not a liar. Like that's
yeah.
And I mean, you see the people coming out, you see the gifts getting dropped off, you see people saying, I want to own this and I believe in it. And that's what North Point's about, man.
Yeah.
It's just a really, really cool deal to see.
Now this year, and I don't know that I have the data to be able to share on this.
Are you going data or data? I go data.
Well, here's the deal. Data, I love that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Data is how you pronounce one piece of data.
Oh,
data is plural data.
No, it is not.
So it is possible to talk data.
No.
But you're probably going to talk data.
Are you kidding me right now?
No, I'm not kidding you.
My mind
I never say that out loud. You asked me, but I always think about it when someone says data.
Listen, I have used both of those with you, and you've never said anything.
No, I've thought it.
Do you go home and talk to Leanne about it?
Yeah, I do, for sure.
Oh,
but I fill in the gap with trust, not suspicion. So I always assume you're talking about just one specific piece of data, which would be data. So anyway,
okay. Right.
So I don't have the data or even one piece of data to show us hard evidence, but it feels as if this was the quickest our registration has filled for people who said, yes, I can use the service at all of our campuses. So we did Nixa campus and Dream Center provided an event for both the Dream Center and Springfield campus, and then obviously the Republic campus as well, across 2 different weekends that we just finished up. But it was not hard to find people to say, hey, I can use some help. Why do you feel like bringing in something warm, something fun, something educational, how does that really move a needle for our mission?
It's action, right? I mean, we And when we're going to talk about the incarnation, right? So I mean, it's kind of hand in hand to where you can read about something, you can look at something, you can study something, but until you actually move into an actionable step, it really doesn't like come alive.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's wonderful to read. It's wonderful to study. And I think that brings actually more beauty when there is action, right? But the action part of it is so crucial because it's actually saying everything that we've talked about, everything that we maybe have learned or felt or an experience that we've had, we're going to make sure that others have that. We're going to make sure that we're stepping out and not just getting into a small group, which small groups are great.
Yep.
Right? You're going to talk with Preston on that later on.
Yes, in January.
Oh my goodness.
Woo, renew your subscription.
Do you have to renew it? Just be on auto renewal.
I was throwing it out to see how it felt.
It feels good.
It feels good on this end. I'm not sure how it feels on the receiving end, but that's cool.
So it's not just this inner circle that you have. It is an open table to say, come and eat. Right.
Love it.
I have always loved Give Back and still do.
Now, one of the things too that is helpful, not only are we able to provide help in a way that we hope triggers hope for those who have an opportunity to engage and utilize some of these gifts and this event, it's also so exciting for us as a church to be able to see hundreds and hundreds of volunteers be involved in that action as you were talking about. And that's been the truth of North Point since the very beginning of North Point. So I remember that was one of the very first things when I came 10 years ago. I thought, man, this church I love that. I've never seen anything like that. And this was already ingrained in the DNA of the church is they give back. And it's looked different over the years. But to see this many hundreds of people, and I know not everyone can, but so many did. And I think those are good muscles. Muscles, honestly, during the pandemic season, we were nervous, right? Not nervous based on the heart or the nature of North Pointers in the past, but just nervous of like, are we going to be able to mobilize hundreds and hundreds of volunteers to move the needle in events again? Because that's always been important. Mm-hmm. It's fun to see that it's happened.
Yeah.
Now, I do have one more question before we kind of go into the theological part of Christmas. If someone is a North Pointer and they've been on this journey with us and they're like, yeah, but we have a dream center. Why do we need to do give back events? Doesn't a dream center do away with give back events? What would your take be on that?
I would say no, right? I mean, the Dream Center is a day in, day out help and hope for the Woodland Heights community. We're going to change a neighborhood. We're going to change an area of Springfield, right?
Yeah.
But we've also got campuses, right? And those campuses are specifically targeted in different regions of Southwest Missouri to also provide help and hope, right? So even though the Dream Center does a phenomenal job day in and day out, and there's a Dream Center campus even within that, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't say, all right, all good, brush your hands off, right? Nixa, Republic, Springfield as a whole, there can be more impact through the campuses. So we can't just stop with thinking, thanks, Dream Center. Team out there, fantastic job. All right, let's get ready for Sunday.
Yeah.
It's more than Sunday, right? Everything is more than Sunday. So yeah, that's what I would say. What would you say?
I would say someone talk to Justin about it because what he said is exciting. I really do believe that it's going to be important for us is when we fight missional drift, right? Any organization will find it, or fight it. Our faith will have to fight it, our families. But as far as North Point, our mission is to be a place where they can experience Jesus, understand that experience within one of our services. But we must be people outside of the walls. And we will never let our biggest strength, the Dream Center, become a curse, meaning that we now delegate that whole DNA to a person. In the same way, we'll talk to Preston about Preston is not the follow Jesus guy now. Like, hey, don't worry, North Point, Preston's got it. It's somebody who's going to lead the way in helping provide an opportunity and avenue for all of us to develop those muscles that are imperative to a healthy, holistic Christian walk. And so part of, as pastoring in this church, I want to make sure we're always evaluating, are we giving everyone who's on this journey with us an opportunity to put into action the things we talk about. And that might be with church events. Certainly, we don't need to replicate the Dream Center everywhere because every community has different needs. And it doesn't always have to be around the church. It could be serving in my school. It could be on the PTA. It could be serving in some community fashion. Those are meaningful ways as well. But one of our responsibilities is to put within an arm's reach of everybody out there an opportunity to serve. So super proud of the event. As we're filming this, what we have in front of us is we have the amount of people who have volunteered, the amount of people who are registered. We've seen all the product come in, and we're super excited. And between this taping and the releasing, we'll actually have the event. So I know as this is released, we'll have just finished it, and we'll talk about some of those highlights this weekend at our Christmas services.
Great.
But let's talk about Christmas, the incarnation of Jesus. And so the word incarnation isn't as weird as maybe we think. For example, if you ever had chili, my favorite type of chili, well, it's Nally's chili. It's from the Northwest. We actually...
What is that?
It's a brand of canned chili that I think would win any chili contest, and I'm willing to put my beans where my bravado is.
I think that's a saying.
I just made it a saying. It's not even a saying.
No, I like
it. But if you look at chili, there's chili, and then there's chili con carne, which simply means chili with flesh, which is not marketable. So you'd say meat.
Okay.
But is that word carnation is flesh, and so the incarnation is just this theological term is God with flesh, the one who came. And so we've been talking about this in our series, and we're not done. We'll continue to talk about it this next weekend. But this incarnation of Jesus, that God would become flesh. Let's talk about that a little bit. What do you think that idea? How does that idea and that teaching distinguish Christianity as even different from maybe other things that were familiar 2,000 years ago or whatever? Talk to me a little bit about how you've processed incarnation.
Oh, a lot. I think that the biggest thing for me on that would be I went through a season where I got caught up in the miracle. I got caught up in the detail. I got caught up in
What does that mean?
Meaning, like, did it really happen this way? Is this really how it was? Was he really in a manger? Was it really a virgin? Was it really... I had all of these different questions that I think are healthy to have and that are healthy to study and walk through. But at the end of the day, I came to a spot where I'm like, I think the story is saying he's with me. He's here. He's in the flesh. He came. He made a move, right? That's the incarnation.
Yeah.
When I read it now, I'm like, it's probably a bigger miracle than the other pieces that I just mentioned.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you have questions on all, you know what I'm saying? It never stops, right? So it's not. I just think that through time, I've tried to get to a spot to where I'm saying, what is the big picture for this, right? Yeah. And I think when we're talking about give back, right? The action part, take a step, the God of the universe, right? This unmovable mover type of thing, right? Took some type of step towards me, towards you, towards us.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right.
So yeah, that for me is kind of when I think our incarnation, that's what I think.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. You're saying the even the word that we hear sung a lot at Christmas and probably a lot of commercials as well as Emmanuel, right? Mm-hmm. And that's that God with us. That's huge. That's huge. And it was very unique 2,000 years ago. It still continues to be a very unique idea. That it's not unique. It's kind of fatalistic to think, man, if I could achieve something, maybe I can be with God.
Right.
If I could stop doing this, or if I could start doing this. And some people might not identify self-identify that that's where they're at. But some of us might be in this vibe of we're thinking, if I could change this about my life, cut this out, add this, then I would have relationship with God, which is the opposite of incarnation and Emmanuel. Is God didn't ask us to join him, he joined us, which is the reason why people could have memorized a good chunk of the Old Testament, been full-time waiting for God to show up, but not notice him, because they never understood the incarnation thought. They thought that maybe they would become a little bit more like God, and then God would say, okay, come on in. But it was not that. It was God's going to become wrapped in skin and become a man, fully human, fully God, fully human. And so,
which is weird.
That is
I want
weird.
to dig into that.
Okay, let's dig into that. Dig. Let's shovel it
because
up.
That's a pretty hardcore dichotomy, right?
Yeah.
Fully God, fully man. So do you think Jesus knew he was the Christ the whole time?
I believe. I mean, I don't know. So my quick answer is I don't know. Being fully man gives it room to understand that maybe he did not. That there was a discovery there. Being in Jerusalem or being in Israel a few times and talking to, or just listening to this journey. One of the things that has really made me think is Jesus learned. He learned the scriptures. He memorized the scriptures. He sat at the feet and asked the questions. That's where he was. We don't know much about him pre-30 years of age-ish, but we do know one significant story is his parents lost track of him, and they found him in the temple asking questions. Now, sometimes we think it's because he was in there giving a sermon or whatnot, but asking questions was the posture of a student, right? In those days, and he's asking the rabbis questions. And so there seems to be this element of learning. Also, there's that moment on the cross where he says, God, why have you forsaken me? Which doesn't seem God-ish, because in those moments, like when I read that, I'm like, he hasn't forsaken you. But he did not know that because he was overwhelmed with being fully man. Now, at the same time, you don't raise someone from the dead. You don't say, hey, I know in your heart what you're thinking. You don't, all these other things if you're not fully God. And so all that to say, at the end of the day, I'm like, I think he was fully man and fully God. But because of a two, there were limitations. And there's that part in Philippians that talks about he emptied himself of some of the rights, probably roles that he had in order to become fully man. So I do believe there's a learning curve. I do believe there were some limitations he surrendered to be able to be fully man. I believe he was sick at times. I believe he probably suffered. I believe he was confused. I believe all these things would be true that we experienced, because it also says in Hebrews, there's no temptation that we face that was not common to him. So while I do believe he was fully God, meaning fully God's son and fully part of the Godhead, it would be the terminology. I believe while on earth, he was driven by being fully man with a full purpose.
I think that type of thought, I think for me, makes it more impactful.
Okay, what's that?
I think when you talk about incarnation, like Jesus felt that, right?
Yeah.
Like there was that piece to where it's like, it's not this like, again, it makes it more personal for me, because it's not this like, I think that a lot of times in Christendom, you can look at this idea of incarnation and you can still have a very distant God, even though it's incarnation, meaning it's like this Jesus figure coming down from a cloud. He knows he's God, never sins. He's here to save, goes back up, see you soon.
It's a role he plays,
right? It still doesn't feel like he came in and like actually was in the muck with me, right? But this kind of thought of like he was born in a cave, he's questioning, he's doing everything that we do, but somehow he's been infused, right? Like God is inside of this Christ. There's this messiness to him, which makes me attracted, right? Yeah. Like that's why I've been attracted to Jesus. Is not because it's like, well, he has the answers and it's like there's something about him when you read the Gospels where you're like, this is way messier than I thought. And I think he might understand me.
Which is incarnation.
Incarnation.
That's what we're talking about.
Right?
Is that's why people. It wasn't if we needed an answer, God would have sent a book. He had already sent the Ten Commandments, right? But we needed saving. So he sent a savior for our sins. And what that meant is someone who understands, someone who models, someone who cares, someone who understands. Not that God didn't understand, but we didn't understand that God understood. And so this isn't like God was like, they had this consulting opportunity at the end and said, hey, son, what did you learn? Help me be a better dad to these people. It wasn't.
I don't know if you've read Brian Zahn, right?
A little bit.
Great author.
Yeah.
But he has a thing on the cross and Christology, and this whole idea of the cross wasn't to change God's mind about us.
Okay.
It was to change our mind about him, right?
Yeah.
Like he didn't go to the cross and now it's like, oh, good, now they're forgiven. It's like, you've always been my child.
Yeah.
Like this cross is to show you how wrong you've gone.
Yeah.
You're killing God. Like there's this idea of it's supposed to be transformative for you.
Right.
God wasn't like, he's like, oh, good. Now we've paid the penalty, and now I accept you. Like, so it's the same idea with the incarnation, right?
Well, I feel like really, and I think that theology is so important to understand. But practically, how does that play out? It's Christmas week, so
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
I don't know if I've told you. I mean, we told listeners, but I don't know if I told you. I know I apologize, but I didn't.
Yeah, honestly, I am a raging optimist. I included myself in your well wish. So thank you.
Great.
So take that little piece of data and group that with all the data you know about me, and that'll help.
Just the classic beans for your bravado move, man. Man, it's classic.
This is so me, man. This is so me. So one of the things, how do we do this? If we're followers of Jesus Christ, one, the encouragement is if you're sitting there this week and this week doesn't look like anything you want it to look like, you need to understand it's not, well, if it would have been all together, then you could experience Jesus. He's with you. He's with you. I hope you understand God with you. That whatever mess you're in, this isn't the first mess he showed up into. That's the story of Christmas. But it also means, how do we position our lives? And that's why I feel like we always have to be on mission. We have to be on mission because the natural tendency for followers of Jesus, the longer they follow Jesus, is to surround themselves with other people who follow Jesus, which is great. It's encouraging. It's fun. We have some shared values. There's some camaraderie. Awesome. But the mission of God sending his son was to be with us. And the last thing we want to do as reflectors of Jesus is to not be with those who can really use the connection, the love, the joy, the acceptance that Jesus brought to us. And so one of the things we always have to look at is how incarnational are we living? And have a quick self-inventory and to say, am I living on mission? Am I living an incarnational life? Meaning, am I bringing everything I know about the good news of Jesus into the life of those who might not expect it, desire it, ask for it? And how am I doing at that? And so what are some ways that we could make sure that our mission not includes, but is pointed towards an incarnational living? How do we do that? Let's say we're talking to someone who's been following Jesus for years and their calendar is built around other people of the same value system, and they just don't have interaction with people currently, and they need to do something intentional to be able to be incarnational. What do you suggest?
You have to take a step, right?
Okay.
I mean, we just started this whole conversation with this God of the universe taking a step, right? Like that's what incarnation is. If you're gonna have incarnational living, you've got to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. So what does that look like in your space? There's something somewhere, and it's not. I mean, I know it's probably like the motives are great, but taking a step is not learning the barista's name at Starbucks. Yeah. And then being like, well, yeah, me and Dan, we just, that's not a step, right? A step is inviting someone to dinner, right? A step is actually entering into someone's life that you probably wouldn't otherwise, right? It's not a natural circle.
That's good.
Right? So like God's realm, like that's not a natural circle for him. That's why the whole Jesus story is crazy, because it's not a natural circle, right? there's this tension to it. So take a step.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that looks like for you, but there's a step. There is one.
It could be joining an activity, like saying, okay, I'm going to become a pickleball player. I'm going to coach my kids' soccer game with a couple of their people from the neighborhood. I'm going to have a neighborhood party. And that's one of the things I'm excited about. We'll talk with Preston about is part of following Jesus is making sure we're living incarnationally, right? Mm-hmm. And so how do we do that? But man, I love that. Take a step. Even at Christmas, you think, okay, the last thing we want to do is spend a week celebrating the God who went out of his natural to come into our world and not maybe include somebody. And so even think, is it too late for you to include somebody this week in that? And not necessarily in, maybe it's inviting them into something, but it's stepping into their world. Jesus didn't invite us into his world as much as he involved himself in our world. And so while I think there's a room for invitation into your world from somebody, it's really involving yourself first into their world. Mm-hmm. And Jesus was, man, he caused people to talk when he did that. But he was strong and he was mission driven. So when he was able to go in there, he had purpose. So it wasn't like a dangerous spot for him, but it was a missional spot.
And it's also interesting, I think, taking a step too. I mean, just at least in my life for Jamie and I think you hit on it. It's not necessarily always inviting them in, right?
Right.
There's been so many times where we've asked to go with someone. And if you look at Jesus, yes. Jesus didn't invite him to the synagogue.
Yeah.
He went and partied with them. Right? And I'm not saying
for their egg
party,
drop,
right?
The helicopters. Your kids will love it.
But it's very, like, you want to talk biblical, like biblical is going out. Biblical is going to that.
That's incarnation.
Them, right? Yeah. It's not necessarily, now, sure, invite them to church. Absolutely. Yes, I'm not saying that. Yeah. Please don't misunderstand that. But there is power in meeting them where they are. Yeah. Instead of asking them to take a step so you can. Right? Like,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. So North Point, I want North Pointers to be the type of people who experience Jesus, surrender every element of your life to Jesus, and in doing so, let the incarnational message of who Jesus is and what he did lead us to do the same. Now, if you have to choose between bringing someone to a Christmas Eve service and bringing some Christmas cookies to somebody that you know, I say bring the cookies, right? Now, I don't think you always have to choose. And I also am well aware that a lot of people are looking for an opportunity to experience Jesus in Christmas, maybe out of culture that might become something more significant. So I want to walk through as we close this, make sure that everyone knows we have a unique holiday schedule. If you're close enough to the mission where you're listening to the Riff, you probably have already read the emails and whatnot. But just in case, just so we're all clear, is this weekend, Friday on the 23rd. So Christmas Eve is what we call it. Christmas Eve on the 23rd at 7:00, we have services. Now, we have portable campuses where we set up, tear down. We have permanent campuses at our permanent locations, meaning we don't have to set up, tear down. Nixa in Springfield, 7:00 Friday night. And Christmas Eve on the 24th is 3 and 5. So we have 3 different experiences at 2 locations. If you're at Republic or your Dream Center, join us at either of those, whatever's best for you. And probably be helpful to take your sphere of influence of people that go there as well. Help remind them. We've done our best too, but remind them, maybe invite them with you. But if you have people in your circle of influence that you think, man, this would be a cool cultural experience, but also even more than that, might be something helpful for them. Absolutely. We're going to believe that God's going to speak to people as we celebrate Christmas. Again, that's the 23rd at 7:00 on Friday night, Springfield Nixa, the 24th at 3 and 5. It'll be the same message, whichever one is best for you. I think it'll be a good experience. It'll be about an hour. We have full kids programming going on. It's going to be a great time. And then Christmas morning, we'll have on demand opportunity for people to experience a short Christmas music and Christmas story that we're excited about. For my family, we always like to take a moment of something like that before we open presents. But so we're going to have that out there for you, whether it's before activities or maybe you don't find yourself super busy on Christmas. We want that to be there for you. That'll be on Christmas morning. It'll be available. That's Sunday. We don't have Sunday in-person services. Again, that's Friday and Saturday. And then the following week is the last of our holiday calendar. It's New Year's Day. The pastor's least. Well, thank you. Pastor's least favorite weekend is when New Year's Day falls on a Sunday morning. So it just doesn't work out with the culture of our day. And we can fight it and say, everyone go to bed fresh on New Year's Eve and show up at all of our services. But we're going to have one service at Springfield and Nixa, 10:30. One service, Springfield, Nixa. So next couple of weeks, service times, that's where they are. They're all different. Starting the 7th and 8th, we'll be back to our Saturdays, Sundays at our regular schedule, all 4 campuses. But we got a holiday schedule. So we hope that that this is set up where we can help you and those around you experience Christmas that would be meaningful, and we're just thankful for you. What a great year it's been. We'll also be able to celebrate what's happened at our Give Back at these services. So Merry Christmas, Justin, to you and to yours. Well, I'm going to ask yours if you delivered my Merry Christmas greeting.
I'll text. Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Well, thank you in advance from them, and thank you right now from me.
Wow.
And North Pointers, Merry Christmas to you. And we're thankful that you joined us today. And we will come back with you next week with another episode of The Riff. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.